Welcome back, RP fam. First of all, if you are watching this video, congratulations. That likely means that you have a chance to play for a fantasy championship. Today for you, I have the top 25 options at quarterback. I'm also going over the top 16 options at defenses and kickers. I'll cover that first before moving into my positionals. I have top 36 running backs and wide receivers for you guys, as well as the top 16 tight ends to play in the almighty week 16. Everything is on the line this week, so we want to make sure we make the best decisions possible. My job is to help you do that by giving you the best information. I have been grinding all week to get you guys what I believe is the most accurate rankings on the planet. We did very well last week. Let's try to continue it on into week 16. Make sure you like the video if you have not already done so. Subscribing to Relentless Press would mean the world to me. We're oh so close to getting 1,000 subscribers. If you hit that button and haven't done it yet, you can join us in the journey. We would love to have you. With all of that said, done, and out of the way, into defense as we go. We start with the Buffalo Bills. They're riding high after embarrassing the Cowboys. The Chargers offense is down Justin Herbert, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, their head coach. That's probably addition by subtraction. But regardless of that, Buffalo destroys LA. They strengthen their playoff hopes with the win here. At number 2, I have the Denver Broncos against New England. They're starting with Bailey Zappi. They may end with Mac Jones. Who knows who's playing quarterback? Does not matter. Broncos eat them in this matchup. At 3, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. Great matchup against the Giants. I know that Philly's defense has been horrid as of late, but they will get sacks in this game, probably cause a couple turnovers as well. My second tier begins with the New York Jets and a good matchup with Washington. Regardless of who's quarterback there right now, it looks like Sam Howell, but the Commanders turn the ball over and the Jets defense has been great with no help from the offense. The Green Bay Packers, basically whoever plays the Carolina Panthers, is a top 5 start. That is why they are here. And I have the Kansas City Chiefs against Vegas at 6. The Cleveland Browns get a boost here. They jump to 7 because Houston is going to be without CJ Stroud. Now I know Houston played just fine without him last week, but Cleveland's defense is a different animal and I like them here on the road. My third tier begins with the Chicago Bears. They get Arizona last week. This defense has been surging over the last month. They put up 4 straight top 7 showings in Fantasyland. Chicago has racked up a dozen sacks and picks in that span. The Cardinals are short on weapons. Love the matchup here. Number 9 and number 10 are the battle in the AFC North. I have the Steelers and the Bengals defenses. Into tier 4, I have the Patriots. They get Denver, and then the Colts and Commanders are at 12 and 13. My 5th and final tier starts with the 49ers against Baltimore. I'm not exactly sweating that matchup, but I don't love it. At 15, I have the Lions against my Minnesota Vikings. And the 16th and final defense I will cover is the Houston Texans. They've been saved by forcing turnovers and creating sacks. They have 2 top 7 finishes in their last 3 games, even though they've given up some points. Flacco is likely going to pick them apart at least a little bit here, but if you're desperate, the Texans have shown that they have upside. Kickers are next, and we start with Brandon Aubrey. Anyone behind that Dallas offense will be good, but Aubrey has been great, has not missed a kick yet this season. At 2, I have Matt Gay, who rebounded last week as predicted, and he now gets a great matchup to help owners with another spike week. The Falcons give up 10 points per game to kickers. That is 3rd most in the NFL. My 3rd ranked kicker is Jake Elliott, and I have Dustin Hopkins immediately after him. My 2nd tier goes Jason Myers, Evan McPherson, and then Young Ho Koo. Great matchups for all of these guys behind offenses that have been able to put up points, except in Koo's case, and that's just because Indy cannot stop anybody. My 3rd tier are all elite tier offensive weapons. We have Tyler Bass, Justin Tucker, Jake Moody, Jason Sanders, and then Harrison Butker as my last top 12 option. These guys all lose their ceiling a little bit because of the matchups, but I am not sweating them if I have to start them. My fourth tier goes Chase McLaughlin in an awesome matchup against the Jaguars, and then Will Lutz, Cairo Santos, and Michael Bagley finish off my kickers this week. Now to my quarterbacks, where I thought I might not be too popular last week, but ended up crushing most of the picks. I am hoping to do the same this week. Once again, I'm starting with Josh Allen against the Chargers. He is the QB1 this week after watching James Cook single-handedly destroy Dallas. Allen threw just 15 balls last week. I think he had only 7 completions. Do not worry, owners, a resurgence is coming here. The Chargers have allowed the 6th highest passer rating and also the 2nd most passing scores since week number 10. Joshy is going to take advantage of it. This is a perfect get-right game for the Bills' passing offense. Jalen Hurts is in at 2 against the Giants. He should cream them. And my second tier begins with Lamar Jackson in a tough matchup against San Francisco. I just love what Lamar does with his legs, and I think that helps him here against a tough Niners defense. Patrick Mahomes is in at 4. He finished exactly where I had him last week as QB14 in another subpar performance for him against the Patriots. That is now 3 straight weeks for Patty that he has fallen outside the top 12, but that will change here against Vegas. Mahomes was the quarterback 8 the last time he faced these Raiders, and the secondary has completely devolved since then. It feels like a perfect get-right game for Andy Reid in this passing attack, much like Josh Allen in Buffalo. I think a monster game is incoming here for Patrick. My third tier starts with Trevor Lawrence. He rounds out my top 5. Now, he is a huge question mark right now. He works through concussion protocol. We're not sure he is going to clear it. If he is out against the Bucs, downgrade all Jaguars besides maybe Travis Etienne. But if he is a go, I do not see how you can bench him against the Buccaneers. Tampa allows over 19 points per game to passers. That is 7th most in the league. And Lawrence had 4 straight top 12 outings prior to last week's dud. At 6, I have Justin Fields. Great matchup with Arizona. He'll continue to use his legs to build you fantasy points. Baker Mayfield is after him at 7. Yes, it is the Bake Show in my top 7. He could easily post his 2nd straight top 5 finish against this laughable Jags secondary, and I'm going to tell you why. Since week 10, the Jags have surrendered the 2nd highest yards per attempt, passing scores, and passer rating as well. This means that there is no ceiling for the Bake Show with a trip to the title game hanging in the balance. I love him this week. My 4th tier begins with Geno Smith. It looks like he will be back against the Titans, and Tennessee has allowed top 10 numbers both in yards per attempt and passer rating over the last month. Smith also has 2 finishes within the top 5. In his last 4 starts, he ranks 8th in yards per attempt, 11th in passer rating, and 10th in hero throw rate in that span. I expect Chef Geno to cook early and often in this game. My 9th ranked quarterback is Dak Prescott. He's been a baller as of late. He had a dud last week, and I have a little trepidation against this awesome Miami defense, but we know what his ceiling is. He still has to be a top 10 play. Speaking of top 10 plays, Jared Goff will have to overcome a difficult matchup against Minnesota, just like he did last week when he threw 5 touchdowns against Denver. Brock Purdy, he gets a brutal matchup here against Baltimore, but that 49ers offense is awesome. He's got a bunch of playmakers that can take it to the house on any single touch. My last QB1 in week 16, none other than Joe Flacco. Hit you with some numbers quick. He's averaging 44 attempts, 313 passing yards, and 2.3 passing touchdowns per game as the quarterback 8 in fantasy since he became a starter. Houston, they've allowed the 4th highest yards per attempt, the 6th highest completion percentage over expected. That means they give up balls that they shouldn't be. Since back in week 10, they have been getting dominated. I think Flacco can easily continue his hot streak. Speaking of hot streaks, Jake Browning is my lucky number 13. I had him as a QB1 last week. He balled for us, and since week 13, Browning is the quarterback 4 in fantasy points per game. In that span, he's 2nd in yards per attempt, 4th in fantasy points per dropback, and 3rd in completion percentage over expectation. Thank you very much, T. Higgins. The Steelers secondary has been average over the last month plus, so there is a clear path to another quarterback 1 showing for Browning. My 5th tier starts with none other than Nick Mullins. He gets an awesome matchup against Detroit and is the perfect desperation play against this weak Lions secondary. Mullins could threaten his 2nd straight quarterback 1 performance. Last week against Cincy, he ranked 5th in the league in CPOE, 4th in yards per attempt, and 11th in passer rating. Do not be surprised if the numbers pop for Minnesota's 4th starting quarterback of the season. Down at 15, I have Tua Tagovailoa against Dallas. The matchup is brutal. I think they lean on the run game. Tua is a bench for me in most formats. Same goes for Kyler Murray. He gets a brutal matchup as well. I am looking for other options. Chicago has been one of the best defenses in the league over the last month. At 17, I have Jordan Love, a tough matchup against Carolina here, and that Packers offense has been questionable at best. Same goes for Russell Wilson, brutal matchup with the Patriots, and Russ really doesn't cook unless he has to, certainly won't against the Patriots. My last quarterback in this tier is Gardner Minshew. He gets a decent matchup with Atlanta, but the upside just isn't there this week. My 6th and final tier starts with Tommy DeVito at 20. He is the best of the rest if you are beyond desperate. Cutlets does have decent upside against a Philly secondary that has been among the worst in the NFL. Since week 10, they've surrendered the 6th most passing yardage per game and the 5th most passing touchdowns, as well as the 8th highest passer rating. Little upside here for Cutlets. At 21, I have Sam Howell. Will Levis is at 22. Make sure he plays. Please, if you have to start him. And at 23, I have Aiden O'Connell. My last 2 quarterbacks this week are Easton Stick and Taylor Heineke, but God help you if you have to start any of those guys. Before we get to running backs, quick reminder, like the video if you are enjoying the content today, and subscribe to Relentless Press to help us get to 1,000 subs. At running back, I start with Christian McCaffrey as usual, and at number 2 is Rachaad White. He's averaged 22 touches and over 120 total yards of offense in his last 3 games. I think that is the floor in this one. My 3rd ranked back is James Cook. About midway through the season, I told you this guy was going to ball out to end it, and that is exactly what he has done. He is going to continue to smash in this cakewalk matchup. He's been unstoppable since Joe Brady took over as the offensive coordinator for the Bills. Up next at 4 is Travis Etienne. He is fantasy's RB7 in points per game. He ranks 2nd in weighted opportunities, 4th in carries, and 5th in targets. Whoever plays quarterback for the Jags this week will not matter. Etienne is going to be handling the rock a ton, and Tampa has softened up front on the ground as of late as well, so you play this stud with confidence. I have Isaiah Pacheco at number 5. He is supposedly a go this week, but you need to make sure he is available prior to kickoff. If he starts for the Chiefs, he has to start for you. Raheem Mostert is next at 6. I'm sure you saw what James Cook did against Dallas, so play Raheem Mostert. 3rd tier begins with Joe Mixon, and Jah Gibbs is next at 8. I have the King, Derrick Henry, at 9. He should rebound and rip apart a Seahawks run defense that has struggled over the last 5 contests. Seattle has allowed the 6th highest explosive run rate and also the 9th most rushing yards per game in that span, so as long as the Titans can keep it close, the King is going to roll. Seattle has lost 5 straight road games. This one is in Tennessee. Yeah, I think it's going to be tight. My 10th ranked running back is DeAndre Swift. He will not let us down this week in a great matchup against the Giants. At 11, I have Josh Jacobs. He is a solid start against a beautiful Chiefs front. If he is healthy, once again, check prior to kickoff to make sure that he is a go. He is dealing with a quad injury. If he sits, I think Zamir White instantly becomes a top 25 option at running back. My fourth tier starts with my last RB1 in a crucial week 16. It is Saquon Barkley. He will bounce back after killing owners last week. The Eagles front has been a bottom 10 unit in the last 5 games. Do not let the dud last week hurt you here in week 16. Play Saquon Barkley. Tony Pollard is next at 13. It'll be a difficult matchup for him against Miami, but I think he gets enough work in the passing game to supplant that. I have Jonathan Taylor at 14. In at 15 is Bijan Robinson. He is a monster question mark after crushing owners last week. I cannot pretend to know what the bum and soon-to-be former head coach Arthur Smith is thinking, and that is the issue for us. It is not the stud running back that's the problem here. Since week 10, Indy is giving up the 10th most rushing yards and the 9th lowest stuff rate. So you can take advantage of this front seven. The real question is, do you believe that Bijan gets his opportunities? If it is me, I am going down with the ship. I am playing the awesome matchup here. Robinson has 100 plus and a tutty on lock if he can see his usual allotment of work. At 16, I have Breece Hall, and at 17, I have Ezekiel Elliott. That is if he is the RB1 and Ramondre sits, which it looks like he will. Tier 5 begins with Kenneth Walker, and I have Devin Singletary up next at 19. He is now the clear RB1 in Houston. At 20, tumbles, it's Austin Eckler. He gets a good matchup against Buffalo, but we just cannot trust him at this point for anything more than that. At 21, I have Aaron Jones against Carolina. He has not looked like the same dude all season, and while that was the case again last week, Carolina is an awesome matchup. A.J. Dillon likely sits here, and the Pack are going to want to pound the rock against this defense. Same goes for Chuba Hubbard, who is next. He gets an equally great opportunity across the sideline, and at 23, I have Ty Chandler against Detroit. Look, he is not going to put up the same numbers that he did last week, so do not chase the points here. Now, that being said, he is going to be the clear number 1. Alexander Madison is still ailing, so the volume is going to be there again this week. The Lions have dominated against rushers since week 10. They boast the 6th highest stuff rate, the 9th lowest missed tackles rate, and the 5th lowest yards after contact per attempt. If you are following in English, you will try to run against Detroit, but you will fail. Chandler is a shoo-in for 20 touches or more, but it would not surprise me if those turn into 80 scoreless yards, so you are betting on the tutty if he is in your lineup. Speaking of betting on tutties, at 24, I have David Montgomery. Into tier 6 now. James Conner rounds out my top 25. He is going to run into a brick wall against the Bears. They have allowed the 4th fewest rushing yards per game, the 6th lowest explosive run rate over the last 5 weeks. Conner's averaging nearly 17 touches since his return from injury. He has that touchdown upside, and that is what keeps him as a viable option this week. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren get great matchups, but they have seemingly now canceled each other out in this offense, which now loses some upside with that quarterback situation. They fall to 26 and 27. Javonte Williams gets a brutal matchup with New England. I have him at 28. Speaking of brutal matchups, hello Jerome Ford at 29. He will struggle against Houston. They boast the 2nd best stuff rate. They've also allowed the 5th lowest rushing yards per game over the last 5 weeks. Now, Ford does have 5 or more targets in 4 of his last 5 games. That will help boost his stock and keep him as a decent option in PPR or half. My 8th and final tier goes Devon Achane at 30. He is still dealing with a toe injury. He played less than 40% of the snaps last week, so there is clear risk here even in a solid matchup. Gus Edwards is at 31. Antonio Gibson should be the lead back again, but it is a tough matchup against the Jets at 32. I have Tyjae Spears, Jerick McKinnon, and Roschon Johnson to round out my running backs. I think Johnson might be the Bears' back to start this week, but the usage has been completely random over the last month or so. There is no chance that you can start any one of these Chicago backs with confidence, so I am pivoting to other options this week in a must-win. At 36, I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and that is just in case Isaiah Pacheco can't go. Just 2 positions to go. On to wide receivers. I start with CeeDee Lamb against Miami, and at 2 I have A.J. Brown against the Giants. Number 3 is Amon-Ra St. Brown. He will feast this week against Minnesota's 2 high looks. They run that at the highest rate in the NFL. And versus 2 high, the Sun God has a 31% target share, 41% air yard share, and an insane 4.11 yards per route run. Along with that, a whopping 37% first read share. Amon-Ra is a lock for his 8th top 12 showing of the season. At 4 in that same game, I have Justin Jefferson, and Mike Evans rounds out my top 5 against the Jaguars. My second tier begins with Stephon Diggs. He's been up and down over the last couple weeks. He will have a big game against the Chargers. Tyreek Hill looks like he will give it a go against Dallas. Risk or not, there is 0 chance that you are benching the Cheetah. I have DK Metcalf way up at number 8. Awesome matchup with Tennessee. And at 9, I have DJ Moore against Arizona. He will not have any trouble getting back on track after he totaled just 52 yards on 8 targets against Cleveland. Arizona has been shredded by perimeter receivers this season. They're going to have no answer for the season's wide receiver 10 in fantasy points per game. My third tier begins with Rashee Rice, who enters my top 10 for the first time. He has officially reached must-start status. He's racked up a 26% target share, 33% first read share, while getting 2.81 yards per route run since week number 12. In that time, Rice is 4th in the NFL in fantasy points per route run. As if that was not enough, his 37% design target rate leads all wide receivers and tight ends. Rice is going to help carry you to a fantasy title. At 11 and 12, my last wide receiver ones of the week are in San Francisco with Debo and Brandon Ayuk. In at 13, I have Calvin Ridley, but he would fall to a risky wide receiver 2 option if T-Law can't go. The matchup against Tampa is golden. Ridley has shredded the single high looks that Tampa has used all season long, so it is an awesome matchup if Lawrence plays. My fourth tier begins with T. Higgins, who is going to carry risk with stud corner Joey Porter Jr. likely shadowing him most of the day. But as the locked-in alpha with Jamar Chase sidelines, there is just too much of a ceiling here for Higgy to bench him, especially after what we saw from him last week. The range of outcomes is wider than we want in a top 15 player, but Higgins is not only playing for the Bengals season, but for a contract as well. He wants his money, and I think he earns it here against the Steelers. At 15, I have Jalen Waddle, Tyler Lockett is next, and Devontae Adams rounds out my fourth tier. My fifth tier begins with Amari Cooper. He is set up for a big day against a very beatable secondary, and I have Chris Godwin at 19 up next. Rounding out my top 20 is Garrett Wilson. He did bottom out against the Dolphins. He produced 29 scoreless yards on 4 targets after seeing 14 targets the previous week. It was absolutely brutal, but I am ready for the pain again, and that is because Washington has been a sieve all season, and only Philly allows more points per game to wideouts. Garrett Wilson has a horrible quarterback in a less than ideal situation, but I will bet on the talent against this secondary for the ceiling. My sixth tier begins with Devontae Smith, and I have Cortland Sutton up next against New England. In at 23 is Jordan Addison. He is a worthwhile gamble in an incredible matchup. The talent has been undeniable from him, and Detroit has hemorrhaged numbers to perimeter wideouts since back in week number 6. At 24, my last wide receiver 2 is Joshua Palmer. Now, he is unlikely to repeat last week's insane output, but he is still an excellent option with a guaranteed 10 targets at least coming in this matchup. Keenan Allen is out. Quentin Johnston is already a bust. The Chargers have to throw to somebody. Like I told you a month ago, Palmer is going to make an impact down the stretch. At 25, I have Drake London. Great matchup with Indy, but risk with Taylor Heineke now at quarterback. And at 26, tumbling a little bit, is Nico Collins. He is trending towards playing, but Case Keenum does not inspire any confidence. We always have to worry about that injury and re-injuring it. And of course, the Browns secondary is elite as well. My 7th tier begins with Zay Flowers, and I have Deontay Johnson up next in a good matchup with Cincinnati. At 29 in that same game as Tyler Boyd, and I have Jacoby Myers at 30. He torched the Chiefs the last time they met up. He could do so again. Jackson Smith and the Jigba gets a great matchup with Tennessee, and I have DeAndre Hopkins falling all the way down to 32. He has been a brutal dice roll as of late. 2 sub-50 showings in his last 4 games. We now have Will Levis dealing with an ankle injury, and he has been sporadic at best even when he has been healthy, so it's going to be more of the same here, I think, against the Hawks. This is also a bottom 10 matchup. So if Levis is out, then you have to bench Nuke no matter what, and if Levis plays, you probably still bench Nuke. My 8th and final tier goes Terry McLaurin, Adam Thielen, Noah Brown, and finally Brandon Cook is in at 36. He likely struggles against one of the best secondaries in the NFL over the last 6 weeks or so when Ramsey came back. Tier 8 is really filled with risky dart throws in less than ideal environments. We have finally made it to the final position, the all-important tight ends, and I will start with Travis Kelce as usual at the top of tier 1. Hello to the top 2, Trey McBride. You have earned it, my man, who've been balling as of late. Good matchup here against the Bears. I love his upside. Speaking of upside, in at 3 is David Njoku. He will continue stacking monster games. He gets a cakewalk matchup here against the Texans. Houston allows the 4th most fantasy points per game, the 3rd most receiving yards per game to the position. Njoku earns his status in tier 1. At number 4, I have TJ Hawkinson. He will deliver in this revenge game against his former team. #analysis. And on the other sideline and in at 5, I have Sam Laporta. He gets a difficult matchup here with Minnesota. The Vikings rank 13th in fantasy points per game, as well as yards per reception allowed to tight ends this season. Ball games numbers have also fallen off against Minnesota's scheme. However, we know that he is always a threat to score, and the Lions are going to throw in this game plenty, so he is still a locked-in option as always. At 6, I have Evan Ingram. He would fall outside of my top 15 if T-Lock can't go. I just cannot imagine starting him if Beathard is the quarterback. At 7, I have Jake Ferguson. Tier 3 begins with George Kittle, and in the same game, Isaiah Likely is in at 9. Those are brutal matchups for both tight ends. Number 10 is Dalton Kincaid in a good matchup with the Chargers. He has been fine, not great as far as usage with Dawson Knox's return. My 11th ranked tight end is Cole Kmet. He has a 19% target share, 1.78 yards per route run, and a 20% first read share against too high, and that is something that the Cardinals deploy more than any team in the league. Kmet is going to post his 4th straight tight end 1 performance. Dallas Goedert is in at 12. I just have a feeling he's the odd man out after getting so much attention last week. And my 4th tier starts with Kyle Pitts, who has a lot of upside against Indy. Hunter Henry is getting hot at the right time. He's got a good matchup with Denver, who gives up more points to tight ends than anybody. And at 15, I have Pat Freiermuth against Cincinnati. The matchup is incredible, and Friar Tuck torched the Bengals the last time they met up, but he's also been unstartable over the last 3 games. racking up a total of 63 yards. For you mathematicians out there, that's just 21 per. So there's obvious risk here, but surprising upside if you have a dart throw. My final tight end this week is Cade Otton. We're just going for that matchup against the Jaguars. And with that, we are finished for Start Sit in week 16. I wish you guys the best of luck in a win or go home scenario. To all of my current subscribers out there, thank you guys so much for the support. It means the world to me. If you have not joined yet, like the video first and then click on that subscribe button. We are oh so close to 1,000 subscribers. We would love to have you along the journey with us, so please click that button and join. Ask questions, comments. I love the engagement. It is one of the reasons that I do these videos each and every week. I hope to see you all next week, coming off a dub with a championship on the line. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Abraham Opatz, and I will see you next week looking for a title.